The 1980s transformed video games into thrilling adventures, from alien worlds to haunted mazes and futuristic battlefields. Each game tested reflex, strategy, and imagination, creating unforgettable arcade experiences. High scores became trophies, and every quarter counted. These 30 games shaped the future of gaming, starting with a classic that turned last stands into legendary heroics. Defender arrived like a burst of lightning across the early arcade landscape, throwing players into a frantic side-scrolling battlefield unlike anything seen before. This was not a gentle introduction to video games. This was a demanding test of reflex, awareness, and nerve. Defender placed you in control of a lone spacecraft soaring over a barren planet, attempting to rescue helpless humans from invading alien forces. The moment you pressed the start button, the screen erupted in fast-moving action. Enemies swarmed from all directions, alarms blared, and every decision had to be made in an instant. Defender truly captured the raw spirit of early arcade culture, where challenge and intensity ruled every glowing cabinet. What made the game unforgettable was its ability to make victory feel earned. When you saved the final human or escaped a deadly wave, the moment stayed with you. Defender helped cement the idea that video games could be thrilling, immersive, and deeply skill-based. And as players kept returning for one more attempt, the arcade world prepared itself for another creature from the dark. Up next is a game that crawled into arcades and delivered its own kind of creeping innovation. Centipede slithered into the arcade scene with a style and atmosphere that instantly distinguished it from the loud space battles of the era. Instead of flying through distant galaxies, players found themselves defending a peaceful mushroom-filled field against an ever-advancing segmented creature. Each segment of the centipede moved with hypnotic rhythm, zigzagging downward with a sense of inevitable danger. The player's tiny shooter sat at the bottom of the screen, delivering precise blasts in a desperate effort to break apart the creeping enemy before it reached the safety line. Centipede became a sensation because of its blend of simple mechanics and relentless tension. The mushrooms changed the movement patterns, the creatures above shifted their strategies, and every round felt different from the last. It drew in both seasoned players and newcomers, creating a rare crossover success in arcades. Vibrant colors, sharp sounds, and fast-paced gameplay gave Centipede a charm that still resonates with retro fans. Today, it showed that video games could create a unique world using rhythm, atmosphere, and imagination. But as players watched the final mushroom disappear, another stranger hero was already preparing to jump into the spotlight. Next comes a character whose world twisted in cubes and chaos. Q*bert bounded onto screens with a design so unusual and charming that it immediately set itself apart from everything else. This little orange creature, with his expressive eyes and signature snout, hopped across a three-dimensional pyramid of cubes that shifted colors with each landing. The player quickly discovered that the cheerful appearance hid a surprising amount of challenge. Enemies bounced down the pyramid with unpredictable patterns, forcing players to plan several moves ahead. One wrong hop could send Q*bert tumbling into the void below. The game's clever use of perspective created a sense of depth that was revolutionary during the early arcade years. It showed that a game did not need explosions or elaborate backdrops to capture attention. All it needed was personality, charm, and clever mechanics, woven together with just enough difficulty to keep players coming back. Every successful color change felt satisfying, and every escape from danger sparked a moment of triumph. Q*bert became a cultural icon, appearing on merchandise, cartoons, and pop culture references throughout the decade. But while Q*bert hopped happily along his cubes, another game prepared to turn the arcade world into a spinning tunnel of color and chaos. Now get ready for the tubular terror that followed. Tempest exploded into arcades with a style that felt like it came from another universe. Instead of side-scrolling landscapes or top-down battlefields, players stared down the length of twisting geometric tubes that rushed toward them like portals into digital space. You controlled a claw-shaped shooter sliding along the edge of each shape, firing into the depths as enemies crawled upward with eerie determination. The perspective was bold and electrifying, pulling players into a world of sharp lines and pulsing energy. Every level seemed alive, shifting shapes and patterns that challenged your timing and precision. What made Tempest unforgettable was its constant tension. Enemies climbed faster, the colors flashed brighter, and the player's heart raced as the edge filled with danger. When the final shot cleared a level and the tube collapsed inward, the sense of relief was powerful. Tempest proved that video games could be abstract, artistic, and still deliver non-stop adrenaline. It was both visually stunning and mechanically tight, earning its place among the most influential arcade experiences of the decade. But as the tubes faded and the neon shapes dissolved, another game was rising that would change perspective entirely. The next title soared upward with an isometric edge that stunned players everywhere. Zaxxon arrived with a groundbreaking feature that instantly set it apart from nearly every other game of its time. For the first time, players experienced an isometric viewpoint that made the world of Zaxxon feel larger, deeper, and more realistic. Instead of simply moving left, right, up, or down, players navigated a spacecraft through fortified space bases with true altitude control. You could rise above walls, dive under barriers, and fire at enemies across different layers of the battlefield. The game required sharp spatial awareness, and its bold use of shadows and angles created an unmistakable style. Zaxxon felt like a glimpse into the future, a promise that video games could deliver cinematic depth and immersive environments. It challenged players to balance careful movement with aggressive combat, rewarding those who mastered its unique controls. The sense of navigating a fully dimensional space made Zaxxon revolutionary, inspiring countless future games to experiment with perspective and scale. It pushed the boundaries of what the arcade experience could be, and as players guided their ships through the final enemy base, another titan of the decade prepared to rise. What followed next reshaped adventure gaming in a way that still echoes today. Pole Position roared onto the arcade scene with a realism that stunned players the moment they grabbed the steering wheel. Unlike earlier racing games that relied on simple shapes and gentle curves, Pole Position delivered a full-color racetrack inspired by a real-world location. The player raced at incredible speeds through sweeping turns, straightaways, and tightly packed competition. The roar of the engine, the rush of the timer, and the challenge of qualifying laps created an experience that felt closer to actual motorsports than anything seen before. Pole Position pushed the boundaries of visual design with detailed landscapes, roadside signs, and a sense of depth that made every turn feel alive. It combined skill, reflex, and strategy, demanding precise control to avoid crashing into other racers or veering off the course. When players finally crossed the finish line, the thrill lingered long after the race ended. Pole Position set the standard for racing games and inspired countless titles that followed. But while players were racing across the asphalt, another hero was preparing to dig deep into the ground. Up next is a game that took the battle underground and inflated its enemies in a way that players never forgot. Dig Dug tunneled its way into arcades with a concept that was both playful and strangely intense. Players took control of a determined little hero armed with an air pump, diving deep into the earth to clear out dangerous underground creatures. The world of Dig Dug was built from dirt, tunnels, and bright colors that invited players to explore. But beneath that cheerful appearance was constant danger. Enemies drifted through walls, crept around corners, and chased the player with surprising speed. The air pump mechanic created moments of tension as players had to decide whether to confront an enemy head-on or collapse the ground above to crush them. Every pump, every tunnel, and every rising boulder added to the excitement. Dig Dug rewarded clever planning and quick thinking, making each round feel like its own little puzzle. With its playful sounds and memorable enemies, it became one of the most beloved games of the decade. But just as players surfaced from the underground, the sky darkened with a formation of alien fighters preparing their next attack. The next game launched players into outer space with perfect rows, sharp patterns, and endless waves of danger. Galaga soared into arcades as a brilliant evolution of classic space shooter design. At first glance, it seemed simple. Move left, move right, and fire upward. But once the alien fleets descended in tight, coordinated formations, players quickly realized they were facing something far more sophisticated. Each enemy swooped, spun, and attacked with deadly precision. What made Galaga unforgettable was its unique challenge mechanics. The Structor Beam could capture the player's ship, creating a moment of panic and opportunity. If the player destroyed the captor, the rescued ship returned, doubling the firepower for the rest of the battle. This risk and reward design pulled players deeper into the experience. With crisp sound effects, sharp animation, and perfectly timed attack patterns, Galaga kept hearts pounding round after round. It became a staple of arcades worldwide and remains one of the most iconic shooters in history. But after surviving the alien assault, players faced a very different challenge on the ground. The next game asked you to cross rivers, dodge cars, and leap across logs in a frantic race for safety. Frogger hopped into arcades with a premise so simple that anyone could understand it in seconds, yet so challenging that players found themselves returning again and again. The goal was straightforward: guide a small frog across a busy highway, over a flowing river, and safely into its home. But every screen brought new hazards. Cars zoomed by with no warning. Trucks thundered down the lanes. Logs floated across the river while snakes, crocodiles, and other dangers lurked nearby. Frogger balanced charm and difficulty perfectly. Its bright colors and cheerful music masked the tension of every leap. Players needed timing, patience, and confidence to survive each crossing. The satisfaction of guiding that tiny frog home made every near miss feel worth it. Frogger stood out because it turned everyday obstacles into thrilling moments of suspense and triumph. As players caught their breath after the final leap, another groundbreaking experience waited in the shadows. The next game did not just play like a cartoon, it looked like one. Dragon's Lair arrived like a spark of magic in the arcade world. While most games relied on pixel art and basic animation, Dragon's Lair stunned players with fully animated scenes created by a legendary animator. The experience felt like stepping into a living cartoon, complete with sweeping movements, expressive characters, and dramatic transitions. Players guided a brave yet clumsy knight through dungeons, traps, and monsters by choosing the correct action at precisely the right moment. The game demanded timing more than reflex and rewarded players with breathtaking sequences that felt far ahead of their time. Dragon's Lair changed the idea of what a video game could be, blending storytelling and animation into a daring experiment that paid off. Players lined up in arcades just to witness its beauty, even if they only lasted a few seconds before losing a life. But as the adventure continued and the knight pressed deeper into danger, the arcade world prepared for another leap forward. The next game used fantasy, exploration, and imagination to redefine what an adventure could feel like. Pitfall burst onto living room televisions with an invitation to explore a jungle filled with treasures, creatures, and dangers lurking beneath every step. Players guided a daring adventurer through thick foliage, rolling logs, snapping crocodiles, and secret underground tunnels that stretched across a massive map. The game offered a sense of movement rarely seen before. Swinging from vine to vine felt exhilarating, like stepping into a Saturday morning adventure where every screen promised a new challenge. Players had to memorize patterns, time every jump carefully, and trust their instincts as they raced against a ticking clock to gather as much treasure as possible. Pitfall created a world that felt alive, and its sprawling environment inspired countless platforming games for years to come. It proved that video games could be more than simple single-screen puzzles. They could be true journeys filled with wonder and anxiety. But as players left the jungle canopy behind, another horizon appeared up in the sky. The next game invited players to soar forward endlessly, hugging the center line of a scrolling river with a steady hand and unwavering focus. Adventure introduced the concept of meaningful exploration, where players could discover hidden rooms, puzzles, and even the first widely known secret Easter egg tucked away behind a wall. It encouraged imagination, letting players decide the meaning behind the symbols and environments. The game's world felt mysterious and alive. Even with its minimalist design, Adventure laid the foundation for nearly every action role-playing game that followed, proving that exploration and discovery could be just as thrilling as combat. But as players marched through the halls of its pixel castles, another challenge awaited beneath an entirely different kind of pyramid. The next game was filled with traps, keys, and relentless hazards that tested the patience and bravery of every explorer who dared to enter. Montezuma's Revenge delivered a sprawling labyrinth of danger and discovery that pushed platforming skills to their limits. Players stepped into an underground pyramid filled with ladders, conveyor belts, hostile creatures, and an unforgiving collection of traps. Every room demanded total attention. A single mistake could send the hero tumbling into a pit or straight into the jaws of a silently waiting enemy. The game blended action with meticulous planning. Players needed to collect keys, memorize pathways, and anticipate movement patterns long before committing to a jump. Montezuma's Revenge became known for its difficulty, rewarding those who mastered its tight controls and carefully plotted layouts. It felt like exploring an ancient ruin one chamber at a time, slowly peeling back the layers of its secrets. The sense of accomplishment after clearing each section kept players pushing forward, even as the challenges grew more threatening. But deep within this dangerous maze, a new kind of menace stirred. The next game did not rely on brute challenges alone. It introduced artificial intelligence that hunted the player with eerie precision, turning every room into a test of stealth and survival. Impossible Mission introduced one of the earliest examples of an enemy that could genuinely outthink the player. Set in a complex network of futuristic rooms, the game challenged players to infiltrate a high-tech stronghold guarded by patrolling robots. These robots did not simply move back and forth. They tracked players, reacted to movement, and behaved with unsettling intelligence. Players needed to quietly navigate platforms, elevators, and computer terminals, searching for scrambled puzzle pieces while staying out of the robot's line of sight. Every decision mattered. Should you risk a sprint across a room or wait for the perfect opening? Impossible Mission created an atmosphere of tension unlike anything seen before. With smooth animation and a haunting electronic voice delivering iconic lines, the game immersed players in a suspenseful espionage adventure. It blended puzzle solving, timing, and stealth into a revolutionary experience that broadened what video games could achieve. But just as players tiptoed past one last deadly robot, the next challenge approached with the sound of metal shifting and machinery transforming. The next game introduced a hero who could change shape mid-mission, opening a doorway to a new era of action. Thexter stormed onto computer screens with a heroic idea that felt years ahead of its time. Players controlled a sleek robot able to transform into a nimble jet at any moment, shifting between forms to survive waves of enemies and elaborate corridors. This shape-shifting mechanic turned every stage into a puzzle of timing and adaptation. In robot form, players marched forward with focused laser fire. In jet form, they zipped through tight spaces and dodged incoming blasts with elegance. The game's homing laser system added a layer of strategy that rewarded precise movement, almost like dancing through danger while calculating every step. Each level demanded careful planning as players navigated mazes filled with armored foes and hidden passages. Thexter created a fast, frantic rhythm that felt fresh during an era when many games stayed grounded on single-screen stages. It introduced flexibility, speed, and transformation all in one smooth package. But after players mastered this robotic ballet, the next challenge slowed the pace, inviting them into a fairy tale kingdom where words, riddles, and quiet exploration shaped the journey. The next game proved that adventure could also be told through stories and imagination. King's Quest arrived like an illustrated storybook brought to life. Instead of blasting enemies or racing clocks, players stepped into a gentle fairy tale filled with puzzles, quests, and whimsical characters. The game blended text commands with colorful environments where every object hinted at a solution waiting to be uncovered. From mystical forests to towering castles, each screen felt handcrafted, encouraging players to experiment with ideas rather than reflexes. King's Quest introduced a deeper kind of storytelling, where players needed to think, explore, and listen carefully to clues. It marked one of the earliest moments when video games began to resemble interactive stories rather than action challenges. The charm of its world inspired decades of point-and-click adventures that followed. Players felt like they were wandering through a bedtime tale, discovering secret paths and unusual characters along the way. But once they left the safety of the kingdom gates behind, the next journey demanded strategy, leadership, and teamwork. The next game did not follow a single hero. Instead, it called for building a party, forging alliances, and preparing for battles that unfolded across a broad fantasy realm. Ultima 3 Exodus transformed fantasy gaming into a grand tactical experience. Instead of guiding one lone adventurer, players managed an entire party of heroes, each with unique strengths, weaknesses, and roles. This shift brought depth to the world and introduced decision-making that stretched far beyond simple combat. Players explored towns, dungeons, forests, and haunted ruins, gathering gear, spells, and clues to battle a looming evil. Strategy mattered on every step of the journey. Positioning, resources, and planning shaped the outcome of each confrontation. The game blended exploration with turn-based combat, inviting players to think more like tacticians than solo wanderers. It pushed the boundaries of computer role-playing games and set standards that future titles would follow for years. The sense of building a team and guiding them through dangerous terrain gave players emotional investment unlike anything before. But as the party marched deeper into dark lands, another dungeon awaited, this one far more unforgiving and filled with deadly surprises. The next game invited players to descend into twisting corridors where danger lurked at every turn, and survival depended on patience, planning, and sheer courage. Wizardry plunged players into a first-person dungeon filled with monsters, hidden traps, and unpredictable dangers. Every decision carried weight. One wrong turn could lead to a deadly ambush or a pitfall that swallowed the entire party. The game introduced the concept of permadeath, meaning fallen heroes could be lost forever. This raised the stakes far beyond what most players were accustomed to. Wizardry demanded map drawing, careful resource management, and nerves of steel as players crept deeper into its maze. Battles relied on strategy and understanding the strengths and weaknesses of each party member. The thrill of finding treasure mixed with the fear of not making it back to the surface. The game's deep dungeon crawling design inspired countless role-playing adventures and helped shape the foundation of modern fantasy gaming. But after braving endless corridors and unmarked chambers, players were ready for something completely different. The next experience swapped dark tunnels for a wild comedic adventure inside a bizarre household filled with odd characters, outrageous puzzles, and a story that blended humor with chaos. Maniac Mansion spun the point-and-click genre into pure comedic brilliance. Instead of knights or wizards, players controlled a group of teenagers breaking into a strange mansion filled with eccentric characters, creepy experiments, and unpredictable hazards. Each character in the group brought unique skills that changed how puzzles could be solved, creating branching storylines and multiple endings. The house felt alive, with rooms that reacted to player choices and situations that could shift suddenly based on timing. Maniac Mansion blended humor, tension, and clever design into an experience unlike anything seen before. Its SCUM engine revolutionized adventure game interfaces, making actions simple, intuitive, and playful. Players were encouraged to experiment, explore, and laugh at the mansion's many surprises. The game proved that storytelling in video games could also be silly, chaotic, and wonderfully inventive. But once players escaped the mansion's quirky walls, an open galaxy awaited. The next adventure invited them to step into outer space, navigating trade routes, star systems, and wireframe worlds where freedom, discovery, and danger spun together into a new frontier. Elite opened the galaxy in a way few players had ever imagined. Instead of guiding a hero along a fixed path, players stepped into the cockpit of a lone starship, drifting between planets, trade routes, pirate ambushes, and endless opportunities. Its wireframe graphics may seem simple today, but in the 1980s they felt like pure science fiction magic. Elite offered freedom. True freedom. You could trade goods, hunt criminals, mine asteroids, or simply explore the vast star systems that stretched far beyond the horizon. Every action changed the player's reputation, shifting them from harmless wanderer to feared space warrior. Elite built an entire simulated universe on the limited machines of the era, proving that games could create living, breathing worlds filled with choice rather than linear missions. The feeling of plotting a course through the stars, hearing the hum of the ship, and facing pirates in open space was unlike anything that came before it. Players wrote their own stories with every jump and every trade. But after escaping the dangers of deep space, the next adventure shrank the world down again, dropping players into claustrophobic chambers where ladders, puzzles, and relentless enemies created a different kind of pressure. The next game turned quick thinking into a survival skill. Lode Runner carved its place in gaming history by turning every stage into a complex puzzle of ladders, brick floors, and clever escapes. Players had to think quickly as they raced across tightly designed layouts while guards chased them without mercy. The twist came from the ability to dig holes into the ground, trapping enemies, or creating temporary pathways to reach hidden treasures. These holes filled in after a moment, meaning timing was everything. One misstep could trap the player instead. Lode Runner balanced action and strategy in a way that felt rare for its time. Every level had a solution, but uncovering it required patience and experimentation. The game's simple graphics hit a deep challenge that kept players retrying over and over until they mastered the timing. Even more impressive was its level editor, giving players the power to design their own stages long before user-created content became common. Lode Runner sparked friendly rivalries in classrooms and living rooms as players tried to stump one another with custom creations. But once players climbed the final ladder and escaped their last brick trap, the next test dug deeper literally. The following game sent players underground to chase precious gems while dodging falling boulders that turned every tunnel into a potential disaster. Boulder Dash combined fast thinking with environmental danger in a way few games dared to attempt. Players guided a brave miner through underground caverns filled with gems, dirt walls, and enormous boulders waiting to crash down at the slightest disturbance. The moment a gem or rock moved, gravity took over. Tunnels could collapse, boulders could trap the player, and narrow escapes became some of the most thrilling moments in gaming. Boulder Dash demanded awareness of every tile, every opening, and every chain reaction that might unfold. Collecting gems required planning routes that balanced safety with speed because the clock never stopped ticking. The game encouraged experimentation, and players quickly learned the satisfying art of manipulating gravity to create safe paths or clear entire sections of the map. Boulder Dash felt alive, dangerous, and wonderfully unpredictable. It inspired countless physics-driven games in the decades that followed. But after digging through dirt and dodging rolling stone avalanches, the next challenge placed players back above ground, behind the wheel of a heavily armed vehicle. The next game turned highways into battlegrounds where survival depended on sharp reflexes and the ability to strike back at enemies tailing from behind. Spy Hunter strapped players into a sleek, futuristic car packed with gadgets worthy of a secret agent mission. From oil slicks to smoke screens and roof-mounted weaponry, the car was designed for one purpose: stay alive on dangerous roads filled with enemy vehicles. The game delivered high-speed chases across scrolling highways where threats came from all directions. Enemy cars rammed from behind, fired weapons, or tried to force the player off the road entirely. Spy Hunter's responsive controls and thrilling soundtrack created the feeling of starring in an action movie where every second mattered. Weapon trucks allowed players to upgrade on the fly, adding new layers of strategy should you slow down to grab a special ability or focus on outrunning enemies. The game encouraged aggressive driving and quick decision-making, making each run unique. Spy Hunter became a staple of arcades, with players lining up to take just one more try down the explosive highway. But once the smoke cleared and the engines cooled, players were whisked away into something far stranger. The next adventure turned back the clock entirely, flinging pilots across centuries where battles spanned different eras, and history itself became the battlefield. Time Pilot delivered one of the most creative concepts of its decade, dropping players into a fighter ship unstuck from time. Instead of battling enemies from a single era, players warped between different centuries, facing biplanes, jet fighters, helicopters, and futuristic war machines in rapid succession. The game offered full 8-direction movement, freeing players from the limitations of scrolling backgrounds or fixed lanes. Time Pilot felt like a constant aerial dance, where every flick of the joystick could mean life or destruction. Swarms of enemies attacked from all sides, demanding sharp reflexes and awareness of the entire battlefield. Each era ended with a unique boss encounter, pushing players to adapt their tactics as the technology and threats evolved. This inventive structure gave Time Pilot a sense of progression and surprise that kept players pumping quarters into the cabinet. It proved that video games could remix history into something thrilling and imaginative. But after soaring across centuries, players soon found themselves facing an even more dangerous journey, one filled with fuel shortages, bombs, and split-second maneuvers that defined the next relentless challenge. Scramble was not just another side-scrolling shooter. It was a relentless gauntlet, where every second, every movement, and every laser blast mattered. When players gripped that joystick in the early 1980s, they were thrown into a world that refused to slow down. The screen pushed forward with unstoppable momentum, giving you no time to breathe as you navigated tight caverns, dodged rockets, and skimmed through narrow corridors. But the game's most unforgiving twist was its fuel mechanic. Your ship constantly burned fuel, and the only way to survive was to destroy fuel tanks on the ground. That meant you were always just a few mistakes away from plummeting into the abyss. Scramble created tension like few games before it, forcing players to balance aggression with precision. It was the kind of arcade cabinet that kept lines long and quarters flowing because every attempt felt just 1 inch closer to mastery. And as its success spread, it opened the doors for an entire generation of horizontally scrolling shooters. But if Scramble was a test of endurance, the next game raised the stakes with a full-blown interstellar identity crisis. Gorf was a strange and wonderful anomaly of the arcade world. Released in the early 1980s, it dared to break from the formula by offering 5 completely different mission stages in one continuous challenge. Each round introduced a new gameplay style, from Galaxian-inspired waves to a first-person space duel that felt shockingly futuristic for its time. Even more memorable was the game's distinct robotic voice, a booming taunt that echoed through arcades. "Prepare yourself for annihilation," it warned, creating a level of personality that most machines simply did not have. Yet Gorf pushed technology forward by using modular hardware, allowing developers to swap out components without replacing the entire machine. That flexibility gave the game surprising longevity and inspired later arcade engineering. But while Gorf's voice taunted from afar, the next game delivered something far more unsettling. A voice that followed you room to room, spelling doom with every electronic syllable. Berserk was pure, electric fear wrapped in a maze of unending corridors. Its synthetic voice was cold, sharp, and unforgettable. Intruder alert! It cried as swarms of hostile robots rushed the player from every direction. This was one of the first arcade games to feature speech, and that speech turned out to be its greatest weapon. The game's top-down mazes seemed simple at first, but every room became a trap of ricocheting laser fire, unpredictable robot movement, and walls that could kill on contact. The infamous villain Evil Otto was the stuff of childhood nightmares. He bounced, he chased, and he could not be stopped. If you lingered too long, he would roll in with a grin and force you to run for your life. Berserk set the standard for arcade tension, inspiring future maze shooters and proving that audio could elevate gameplay into emotion. But for every maze you escaped in Berserk, the next game challenged you with something even more overwhelming. Not a room full of enemies, but hundreds of them appearing all at once. Robotron 2084 did not just challenge players, it assaulted them. The moment the game began, you were surrounded by hostile robots closing in from every corner of the screen, with 2 joysticks controlling movement and firing independently. Players had to think, aim, and dodge all at the same time. This twin-stick control scheme became revolutionary, influencing countless games for decades to come. The story was bleak. Humanity had nearly been wiped out by its own machines, and your mission was to save the last remaining human families scattered across the battlefield. Flashing lights, relentless enemies, and chaotic movement transformed every second into a desperate struggle for survival. Robotron was a dance of precision wrapped in total chaos, and those who mastered it felt invincible. But if Robotron was a storm of metal bodies, the final game on this list unleashed something even more fearsome. A creature with a voice that roared across galaxies. Sinistar was not just a villain, it was a force of nature. Players mined crystals to build Cinebombs while enemy workers and warriors attacked from every direction. But the true terror came when the monstrous Sinistar finally came alive. Its roar shook arcades. "I am Sinistar!" It boomed, racing across the screen with terrifying speed. The creature was massive, relentless, and nearly impossible to outrun once it targeted you. The feeling of being hunted defined Sinistar's identity and cemented its reputation as one of the most intimidating arcade opponents ever created. Players had to scramble to gather resources, build weapons, and fire Cinebombs with perfect timing to destroy the beast. Every encounter felt like a final battle. Sinistar showed how sound design, enemy behavior, and world building could merge into an unforgettable arcade experience. Its legacy echoed throughout the decade, proving that games could be both thrilling and terrifying. If you enjoyed this trip through the classics, make sure to subscribe so you never miss another deep dive into gaming history. Hit the bell to stay updated and join us as we explore more legendary worlds, unforgettable challenges, and the stories behind the games that shaped our childhoods.